If you've ever stepped outside, looked at your garden, and felt that tiny jolt in your chest because you spotted something long, moving, and very much uninvited, then today's video is going to save you a whole lot of panic. Most gardeners never realize that some of the plants they're proudly growing are basically rolling out a red carpet for snakes. Not because the plants are magical or cursed or anything dramatic like that, but because they create the exact microenvironments snakes love: quiet, cool, hidden, and full of free food. And the wildest part? These plants are extremely common. You've probably seen them in your neighbors' yards. You might even have a few growing right now without realizing they're practically saying, "Hey snake, welcome home." Now, before anyone freaks out, let me say this clearly: snakes are not villains. They play a role in nature. But while we can respect them from a distance, we don't need them sipping iced tea in our garden beds or surprising us when we're trying to harvest tomatoes. So what we're doing today is simple. We're walking through 10 plants you should never plant unless you actually want snakes to feel comfortable enough to settle in. And as we go through this, I want you to pay attention to how these plants behave, how they grow, and why snakes get attracted to them. Because once you understand the why, you'll be able to choose safer alternatives without stressing your budget or ripping up your whole yard. So let's begin with something subtle: plants that create deep, still moisture at the base. If you've ever pulled up a plant and found that rich, damp pocket of soil underneath, that's paradise for snakes. Imagine a plant with thick, drooping leaves that hug the ground. Now imagine what lives under that cool shade: frogs, insects, slugs, rodents, all the things snakes love to snack on. You remove the plant, and suddenly everything underneath scatters like someone turned on the lights in a club. This kind of microhabitat invites snakes not because of the plant itself, but because of the entire ecosystem it creates under those leaves. So picture this: you step outside in the evening, the air is still, the ground is slightly damp from last night's rain, and the broad leaves of that plant are collecting tiny beads of water that drip down quietly. To you, it's peaceful. To a snake, it's the safest, coolest, quietest VIP lounge in the entire yard. And the funny thing? Gardeners plant this stuff because it looks lush, tropical, and full, but in reality, it's basically a reptile resort. Then there's the second type of plant: anything with super dense, low foliage that never really opens up. These are the plants people love because they fill empty spaces, hide the soil, and make the garden look full. But that fullness is exactly the problem. Think about snakes. They're not trying to sunbathe next to your lawn chair. They thrive where they can move without being seen, and dense, low plants give them the perfect cover. You could walk past that plant 50 times and have no idea something is curled up inside. If a plant is so dense that your hand disappears when you reach in, that's a plant snakes consider prime real estate. And many people grow them along walkways or right next to front doors, completely unaware of what might be tucked underneath. Then you've got the plants that produce heavy seasonal debris, thick layers of fallen leaves that turn into a soft, moist carpet. Snakes love that. You think, "I'll rake it later," but snakes think, "Perfect, insulation." Even worse, those leaves trap insects, and insects attract small prey. The food chain starts building itself without your permission, and once the food shows up, the hunters follow. That's why some gardens seem snake-free for months and then suddenly become hotspots. It's not random, the environment changed, and the snakes responded like they got a notification. Another snaky culprit: plants that create narrow hiding tunnels. You've seen them before. Plants with arching stems or grass-like structures that droop over each other and form small natural tunnels at the base. To you, it's decorative. To a snake, it's a covered walkway. Even if the plant looks harmless from above, the structure underneath can be a perfect hiding lane. Snakes don't like to be exposed. They move through these tunnels like they're navigating secret hallways. Now let's talk about the plants with berry clusters or fruit drops that fall and sit on the soil. Most gardeners don't think twice about a few berries dropping here and there, but those berries attract rodents. Rodents attract snakes. It's that simple. Snakes don't show up because they love fruit, they show up because the fruit invites the things they love to eat. You might think it's just a few berries, But to a rat or a mouse, a single berry is basically a lottery win. And once a little mouse figures out a food source is consistent, it comes back. And when mice come back, snakes eventually follow. Then we can't forget about plants with thick bark mulch underneath. Even though mulch isn't a plant itself, certain plants practically require constant mulching, and that mulch holds moisture and breaks down into soft pockets of organic material, another ideal hiding place. Snakes don't burrow, but they absolutely love slipping between layers of mulch, especially if insects and amphibians are already thriving there. So now imagine standing in your garden looking at a plant you've grown for years without realizing the ecosystem forming beneath it. The soil is cool, there's shade, there's water, there's food, and everything is so well insulated that snakes can sit there completely undetected. Not because they're trying to scare you, but because you unintentionally built the exact conditions they love. As we go deeper into this, I want you to notice something. It's not about fear, it's about awareness. When gardeners understand how plants shape microenvironments, they make better choices. They avoid headaches. They create gardens that are not only beautiful, but also safe, clean, and manageable. Now, one of the most surprising types of plants that attract snakes are tall clumping grasses, the ones people love for ornamental flair. They sway beautifully in the wind, they look elegant from afar, and they give your yard that high-end landscaping feel. But under that beauty is a thick, tangled base that stays dark even at noon. If you've ever tried to trim one and found that deep, matted root pad underneath, that's exactly why snakes love them. That root pad doesn't just hide snakes, it hides the animals snakes hunt. It's like a tiny apartment complex with free rent. People plant these grasses thinking they're low-maintenance decor. In truth, they're some of the most common snake havens in residential landscapes. You could walk right up to them, bend over to admire them, and not realize you're inches away from something curled at the base. And the crazy part? Snakes hardly ever leave once they find a clump like that. It's safe, it's stable, it's predictable. Everything they need. And then there are plants that trap humidity. You know the ones. Thick, lush, wide, almost pillow-like. When you part their leaves, you can literally feel the temperature shift. And anytime you have warm air outside and cool, moist air underneath, that's a magnet for amphibians. Frogs slip under those leaves like they're clocking into their night shift. And wherever frogs go, snakes will eventually show up. The ecosystem doesn't care about your landscaping style. It responds to microclimate. The plant you chose for texture or volume is actually temperature engineering your garden for wildlife. But here's where things get interesting. Some plants don't just attract snakes because of shade or moisture, some attract them because of positioning. A plant itself may not be a natural snake attractor, but placing it in the wrong spot creates the perfect conditions. For example, plants placed near water sources, AC units, or low-vented shade spots can unintentionally become snake magnets. Snakes follow structure, they follow cool airflow, they follow moisture trails, they follow prey paths, and certain plants amplify these cues. So imagine a plant sitting right beside a place where condensation drips. That plant's soil stays cool longer. Insects take shelter there. Frogs show up. And suddenly, a plant that's harmless in a sunny spot becomes a reptile lounge when placed next to shade and moisture. Most gardeners never think about placement. They only think about looks. But snakes think like survivalists. Every garden is a map, and every plant is either a landmark or a shelter. Another plant on this list, one almost everyone has seen, is the kind that spreads by sending out runners or forming wide mats. These mats look tidy from above, but are hollow underneath. Lift the edge of one, and you'll often find tunnels formed by rodents, lizards, or insects. Snakes use these tunnels like public transportation routes. They don't have to fight through leaves or roots. Everything is already cleared for them. All they have to do is glide through. And because the tunnel stays shaded and moist, the snake barely has to adjust its body temperature. It's effortless shelter. You'll notice a pattern here. Snakes don't look for plants, they look for conditions. But because plants create those conditions, some become magnets without meaning to. And that brings us to one of the most surprising categories, plants with hollow stems or large base crowns. When the crown is open enough to form a natural cup, snakes use that base as a resting pocket. They don't need space for their whole body, just enough to stay coiled and hidden. And these pockets stay cool long after the rest of the garden heats up. They trap shade effectively, which is why even small snakes slip into them. At this point, you're probably starting to picture your garden in your head. Good. That means you're thinking like a technician, not just a gardener. And once you see these patterns, you'll understand the last few plants even more clearly. There are also plants that shed bark or peel. That loose bark falls around the base and forms shelter layers. Insects crawl into them, spiders nest, small creatures hide, and snakes take advantage of the free buffet. It's an ecosystem stacking itself higher and higher until eventually the predators show up. And here's the twist. Some plants attract snakes not because of shade or moisture, but because they attract the prey snakes love the most: birds. Plants with berries or long seed heads bring birds. Birds drop food. Birds drop feathers. Birds build nests nearby, and snakes, especially young ones, take advantage of the dropped food and small prey. The plant itself didn't invite the snake, but the ecosystem around it did. By now, you may be noticing something important. This entire topic isn't about fear-mongering. It's about understanding how one innocent plant can create an environment you never intended. And when gardeners finally understand the small, hidden factors that shape wildlife movement, they become smarter, safer, and more confident. We're about halfway through, and the next plants we're going to talk about are the ones most people never expect to attract snakes, but they do. Not because they're dangerous, but because they create perfect combinations of shade, shelter, and prey pathways. And once you hear them, you might look at your yard in a completely different way. Now, here's where things take a surprising turn. Some plants attract snakes indirectly because they create silence. Yes, silence. A plant that muffles sound at ground level gives snakes the confidence to move without feeling exposed. You'd never think sound matters, but it does. When the lower foliage absorbs noise instead of letting leaves rustle, snakes glide through without disturbance. Gardeners usually plant these for privacy or calmness, but snakes interpret that calm as security. A still garden floor is basically a green carpet rolled out for them. And if you've ever wondered why some yards seem to have snake activity while the one next door is completely empty, it often comes down to how quiet the ground layer is. Plants that form a soft, hushed bed of foliage or fallen stems create spaces where even tiny movements are undetectable. Snakes love that stealth. They move like shadows, and shadow-friendly environments feel like home. The next plant we need to talk about is one that spreads aggressively, popping up in corners you didn't expect. As soon as a plant starts invading little cracks and forgotten edges, guess who follows? The creatures that love tight, dark corners. Snakes don't need a palace. They need a gap that offers shelter and a way to disappear instantly. Plants that creep into every nook create the same kind of coverage snakes naturally seek out in the wild, under rocks, fallen logs, and thick forest floors. It's not the plant itself that attracts them. It's the behavior, spreading, covering, shading, filling gaps. A creeping plant in a sunny spot may be harmless, but a creeping plant in a damp or shaded corner? That's basically a self-maintaining, temperature-controlled runway for anything that likes living out of sight. But one of the biggest shockers on this list, one almost no one expects, is the flowering plant that blooms low and traps insects. Gardeners love these because they bring pollinators. Bees buzz, butterflies swirl, even the occasional hummingbird stops by. It's beautiful, but beauty draws insects, and insects draw the creatures that eat them. And once those creatures settle in, snakes eventually follow to feed on them. You never see the early stages. You only notice when something slithers past your watering can and suddenly the garden doesn't feel romantic anymore. This doesn't mean you should avoid flowering plants, but it does mean you should avoid planting the heavy, low-blooming varieties in corners where air doesn't circulate. Because stagnant air is an invitation, and snakes love environments where the air doesn't move too much. It allows them to keep their body temperature stable without effort. A humid bloom cluster sitting over still soil may look innocent, but underneath, it's full of life. And where there's life, predators show up. Now, imagine a plant that traps dew every morning. Beautiful droplets lining the edges, sparkling like diamonds in the sunlight. It looks fresh and magical, but on the ground beneath it, moist pockets. All day, every day. And if that dew drips straight down into the soil instead of evaporating, the base stays cool long after the sun is up. Snakes find those cool spots the same way we find shade on a hot day. They gravitate toward the temperature shift instinctively. You might think it's just morning dew, but moisture is currency in the animal world. Moisture means insects, insects mean frogs, frogs mean snakes. It's a ladder, and once the ladder forms under a plant, everything climbs it. Another unexpected plant on this list is the kind that creates vertical shade. Tall stems with very narrow bases. From above, you'd never think anything could hide there. It looks too exposed, too open. But snakes don't approach from above. They enter from the ground. And the bases of these plants create perfect slivers of shadow that snakes slide right into like bookmarks inside a spine. When the base is cool but the top is warm, the temperature difference creates a natural pocket that holds air. That pocket becomes a resting station. Snakes don't have to hide their entire bodies. They just need to hide enough to feel safe. These vertical shade plants create a micro slice of darkness that looks almost invisible to humans, but is absolutely irresistible to anything that relies on stealth. And let me tell you something most people never realize. Snakes love consistency. They love a plant that behaves predictably every season. A plant that dies back the same way, drops debris the same way, traps moisture the same way, spreads the same way, blooms low, traps humidity, creates tunnels, feeds birds, feeds rodents, steadies temperatures. They build microhabitats. And snakes don't need an invitation. They only need a microhabitat. So the bigger message here isn't fear these plants. It's understanding how plant behavior creates environments. Because every plant you grow becomes a tiny engineer. It shapes soil, it shapes airflow, it shapes shade, it shapes moisture, it shapes wildlife movement. Good gardeners look at a plant and see beauty. Great gardeners look at a plant and see the ecosystem it creates. And that's the goal for you today, to stop seeing plants as decorations and start seeing them as environmental architects. Once you do that, you can choose the right plants, place them in the right spots, and avoid creating the perfect hidden snake condos by accident. So if you have any of these plants and you're thinking, oh no, I've been hosting reptiles without even knowing, don't panic. You don't have to rip everything out. You just need to make smart adjustments. Trim low foliage, improve airflow, reduce debris buildup, remove excess mulch layers, break up dense mats, relocate plants that trap humidity into sunnier, drier spots. Small changes make huge differences. And if you're watching this thinking, wow, I never even knew plants could set the stage for snakes like this, then trust me, most people don't. That's why this video exists, not to scare you, but to make you a more aware, more confident, more intentional garden owner. Because a beautiful garden is good. A beautiful garden that doesn't surprise you with reptiles every other week, even better. And now that you understand the hidden relationships between plants and wildlife, you can build a yard that's lush, safe, and welcoming to you, not to snakes. Stick around for more tips, drop a comment telling me which plant surprised you the most, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a chance to level up your garden without breaking the bank.